Your child seems perfectly fine. They're happy, they smile, they play, but there's something subtle happening that you're missing, something so small, so easy to overlook that most parents don't notice until it's already caused a delay. Pediatricians miss it too, because it doesn't show up on a standard checklist. It hides in the everyday moments, in the way your child plays, in the sounds they don't make, in the skills they skip. Here are the hidden signs that something's not developing quite right, and why catching them early changes everything. Before we begin, I need you to hear this. If you recognize any of these signs in your child, it doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean your child is broken. Early intervention exists precisely because brains are incredibly plastic in the first 5 years. What looks like a delay now can completely resolve with the right support. But here's the truth most doctors won't tell you. The earlier you catch developmental delays, the easier they are to correct. A 3-month delay at age 1 can become a 3-year delay by age 5 if left unaddressed. Not because the child can't catch up, but because the gap keeps widening as other skills build on the missing foundation. You're not overreacting by paying attention to these signs. You're being an observant, proactive parent. And that's exactly what your child needs. So let's look at what most parents miss. Sign number 1, they don't babble in a conversational pattern. Most parents think babbling is just random sounds. Ba ba ba, da da da. They hear it and check the language box, but speech-language pathologists look for something deeper, conversational babbling. Around 7 to 9 months, babies should start babbling with the rhythm and tone of conversation. They talk to you in strings of sounds that go up and down like sentences. They pause and wait for your response. They change their pitch and volume. It sounds like they're speaking a foreign language, even though they're not using real words yet. This is called jargon babbling, and it's a critical precursor to actual speech. It means the baby understands that communication is a two-way exchange. Their brain is practicing the motor patterns and social patterns of conversation before they have the words. If your 9-month-old babbles, but it's all the same flat tone, repeated sounds without variation, without that conversational quality, that's a red flag. If they babble at objects but not at people, that's another sign. They might be making sounds, but they're not using those sounds to communicate. A mother in Boston told me her son babbled constantly at 10 months. Everyone said his language was great, but she noticed he never directed the babbling at her. He'd babble at his toys, at the wall, while staring out the window. When she tried to engage him in back-and-forth conversation, he didn't respond. Her pediatrician said not to worry, but she pushed for a speech evaluation anyway. The therapist identified it immediately. He had the motor ability to make sounds, but not the social communication piece. He wasn't understanding that sounds are for connecting with people. With early intervention, lots of face-to-face play, turn-taking games, responsive interaction, he caught up completely by 18 months. But if she'd waited until age 2 or 3, when he should have been talking, the gap would have been much harder to close. Listen not just for sounds, but for conversation. Does your baby talk to you? Do they wait for your response? Do they seem to expect you to reply? That back and forth is more important than the sounds themselves. Sign number 2, they skip crawling or crawl strangely. Many parents celebrate when their baby skips crawling and goes straight to walking. Look how advanced they are. But pediatric occupational therapists and physical therapists see this very differently. Crawling is not optional. It's a critical developmental stage that builds neural connections, core strength, and bilateral coordination. When babies crawl on hands and knees, they're using opposite arm and leg in coordination. This cross-lateral movement builds the corpus callosum, the thick band of nerve fibers connecting the left and right hemispheres of the brain. This connection is essential for reading, writing, coordination, and complex problem-solving later. Babies who skip crawling often show up years later with learning difficulties. They might have trouble with reading because their eyes don't track smoothly across a page. They might struggle with coordination in sports. They might have trouble with tasks requiring both hands to work together, like tying shoes or cutting with scissors. But it's not just about skipping crawling. Some babies crawl in unusual ways that also signal problems. If your baby consistently army crawls, dragging their belly past 9 months, that suggests weak core muscles. If they scoot on their bottom instead of crawling, that can indicate low muscle tone or asymmetry. If they crawl using only one side of their body, that's a significant red flag for motor planning issues. A physical therapist in Seattle told me about a 4-year-old she evaluated for clumsiness and poor handwriting. In taking the history, she learned he'd never crawled, went straight from sitting to walking at 10 months. His parents were proud of this. But his current struggles, the reason they were in her office, were directly related to the developmental stage he'd skipped. His brain never built those cross-lateral connections. His core was weak. His bilateral coordination was poor. She actually had him practice crawling at age 4, and within weeks, his handwriting improved, his balance improved, and his ability to do two-handed tasks got better. His brain was building connections it should have built 3 years earlier. But it took intervention because nobody caught the missing piece when it mattered most. If your baby isn't crawling by 10 months, don't celebrate. Get them evaluated. And if they're crawling in unusual ways, using only one side, dragging themselves, scooting, mention it to your pediatrician and push for a PT evaluation if needed. This stage matters more than most parents realize. Sign number 3, they don't engage in pretend play by 18 months. Your toddler plays with toys. They stack blocks, they push cars, they look at books. All good signs, right? But here's what pediatric psychologists look for. Are they pretending? By 15 to 18 months, children should start engaging in simple pretend play. They hold a toy phone to their ear, they feed a stuffed animal, they pretend to drink from an empty cup. By 2 years, this should become more elaborate, putting the baby doll to bed, stirring in a toy pot, building a garage for their cars. Pretend play is a window into cognitive and social development. It requires several complex skills: symbolic thinking, understanding that one object can represent another, theory of mind, understanding that others have thoughts and feelings, memory, recalling what they've seen adults do, and imagination. When pretend play is absent or significantly delayed, it can signal autism spectrum disorder, cognitive delays, or language delays. Children who don't engage in pretend play often play in very concrete, repetitive ways. They line up toys in perfect rows. They spin wheels on cars for long periods. They dump and fill containers repeatedly. These aren't bad activities. They build certain skills. But if that's all they do, if there's no variety, no imagination, no pretending, that's concerning. A mother in Austin told me her 20-month-old daughter played with toys constantly, but never pretended. She'd stack blocks, then knock them down. Stack them, knock them down, for 30 minutes. The mother thought it showed focus and engineering skills, but when she mentioned it during a routine checkup, the pediatrician asked more questions. Did she feed her dolls, pretend to talk on the phone, act out scenarios she'd seen? No, none of that. Just the same repetitive, concrete play. Further evaluation revealed early signs of autism. Not severe. She made eye contact, smiled, showed affection, but her play was rigid and repetitive, lacking the flexible, imaginative quality typical for her age. With early intervention focused on joint attention and play skills, she learned to engage in pretend play, and her social communication improved dramatically. Without that early catch, she might have continued developing the rigid patterns that would later interfere with social relationships and flexible thinking. But because the mother mentioned what seemed like a small detail, the absence of pretend play, they caught it early. Watch how your child plays. Are they just manipulating objects, or are they creating scenarios? Are they reenacting things they've seen? Are they assigning roles and meanings to toys? If the answer is no by 18 months, mention it. Push for evaluation. This isn't something to wait and see about. Sign number 4, they eat an extremely limited diet and gag on new textures. All toddlers go through picky phases, but there's a difference between typical pickiness and sensory-based feeding difficulties that signal deeper issues. Most parents and even many pediatricians miss this distinction. Typical picky eating. Your child refuses vegetables but eats fruits, proteins, grains, and dairy. They have foods they prefer, but will eat a variety within food groups. They might refuse dinner, but ate well earlier in the day. Sensory-based feeding problems. Your child eats fewer than 15 to 20 foods total. They gag or vomit when presented with new textures. They only eat one brand of a specific food, won't accept any substitute. They avoid entire food groups or textures. No crunchy foods, no wet foods, no mixed textures. They show extreme distress around meal times. This isn't just about nutrition. It's a red flag for sensory processing disorder, a condition where the brain has trouble receiving and responding to sensory information. Children with SPD often have problems beyond food. They're bothered by clothing tags, avoid messy play, cover their ears at normal sounds, have meltdowns during transitions. These sensory issues interfere with learning and development. Children who can't tolerate varied sensory input often struggle with focus, emotional regulation, and social situations. The feeding piece is just the most visible symptom. A father in Portland described his 3-year-old son who ate exactly 8 foods: chicken nuggets, one brand only, white bread, applesauce, yogurt, vanilla only, Cheerios, graham crackers, apple juice, and milk. That's it. Anything else caused gagging, tears, refusal. The pediatrician said he'd grow out of it, but the father noticed other things. His son hated getting his hands dirty, refused to walk barefoot on grass, had meltdowns over scratchy shirts. He pushed for an occupational therapy evaluation. The OT diagnosed sensory processing disorder. The feeding issues weren't about being stubborn. His son's nervous system was genuinely overwhelmed by certain textures, tastes, and smells. With feeding therapy and sensory integration work, he gradually expanded his diet and became less reactive to sensory input overall. If your child's eating is extremely restricted, if they gag on textures, if food causes genuine distress beyond typical toddler refusal, don't dismiss it. It's often pointing to something deeper that affects more than just meals. Get an OT evaluation that includes sensory processing. Early intervention in this area can change a child's entire trajectory. Sign number 5. They don't point at things to share interest by 12 to 14 months. Pointing seems like such a small thing, but to developmental specialists, it's huge. By 12 to 14 months, babies should point at things, not just to request them, but to share interest with you. There are 2 types of pointing, and only one of them is developmentally significant. Requesting pointing is when a baby points at something they want, crackers on the counter, a toy across the room. They point, you give it to them. This is important, but it's basic communication about needs. Declarative pointing is different. This is when a baby points at something interesting, then looks back at you to see if you're looking too. They point at a bird in the tree, check your face, smile when you acknowledge it. They point at a dog walking by, look at you, wait for you to comment. They're not requesting anything, they're sharing an experience. They want to connect with you about what they're seeing. This is called joint attention, and it's a critical building block for language and social development. It shows the child understands that other people have thoughts and interests, that experiences can be shared, that communication is about connection, not just getting needs met. When declarative pointing is absent or delayed past 15 months, it's one of the earliest red flags for autism spectrum disorder. Children with autism often develop requesting pointing just fine. They can tell you what they want, but they don't point to share. They don't check to see if you're interested. They don't try to connect through joint attention. A mother in Chicago told me her 15-month-old son never pointed. She didn't think much of it until a friend's baby, 3 months younger, pointed at everything. Dogs, airplanes, lights, birds, constantly looking back at her mom to share the moment. She realized her son never did that. He could ask for what he wanted, but he never tried to share what he found interesting. She brought it up at his pediatric appointment. The doctor said pointing wasn't required, that boys develop slower, but the mother's instinct told her something was off. She got a developmental evaluation. The therapist identified absent joint attention and limited social reciprocity, early signs of autism. With early intervention, he learned these skills, and by age 3, he was socially engaged and communicative in ways that seemed impossible at 15 months. Early intervention before age 2 is the most effective time to address autism symptoms, but you can't intervene if you don't notice the signs. And absent declarative pointing is one of the earliest, most reliable signs. If your child isn't pointing to share interest by 14 months, get evaluated. Don't wait. Sign number 6. They can't calm down without external help. All babies and toddlers need help regulating emotions. That's normal. But by certain ages, children should start developing self-soothing skills. If your 2-year-old still can't calm down at all without you picking them up, rocking them, nursing them, or giving them a screen, that's a sign their self-regulation skills aren't developing appropriately. Self-regulation is controlled by the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for emotional control, impulse management, and attention. This area develops gradually through early childhood, but it develops through practice. Children need opportunities to experience distress and learn to bring themselves back down, with support nearby, but not immediate rescue. Children who are always immediately soothed by external means, rocking, nursing, screens, food, don't build this capacity. Their nervous system doesn't learn, I can calm myself down. And this has massive implications for behavior, learning, and relationships throughout life. By 18 to 24 months, you should see your child starting to use basic self-soothing strategies, sucking their thumb, hugging a lovey, taking deep breaths if you've modeled it, asking for a hug, but then calming down relatively quickly. They should be able to tolerate small frustrations, like a toy not working immediately, without complete meltdown, at least sometimes. If your 2-year-old goes from 0 to complete meltdown instantly, every time, and cannot calm down without significant external intervention, that suggests their regulatory system isn't developing well. This can be related to sensory processing issues, anxiety disorders, or simply lack of practice because parents have been too quick to rescue. A mother in Denver told me her 2.5-year-old daughter melted down 10 to 15 times per day, couldn't handle any frustration, screamed until her mother picked her up and either nursed her or gave her the iPad. The mother was exhausted, but the pediatrician said it was just typical toddler behavior. Then a friend suggested an occupational therapy evaluation. The OT identified that the daughter had never learned any self-regulation skills because she'd always been immediately soothed. Her nervous system hadn't built the pathways for self-calming. The OT taught the mother to stay close but not immediately rescue, to say, "I know you're upset, take some breaths, I'm right here," and give the child space to try to calm herself. It was hard at first, but within 2 weeks, the frequency and intensity of meltdowns dropped dramatically. The daughter learned she could handle frustration. Her brain built new regulatory pathways, and the mother realized she'd been preventing development by trying to help. If your child can't ever calm themselves down, even partially, by age 2, that's worth evaluating. Self-regulation is foundational for everything else. Learning, relationships, behavior, make sure it's developing. Sign number 7, they walk on their toes consistently. Lots of toddlers walk on their toes occasionally. It's fun. They're experimenting with different ways of moving. That's normal. But if your child walks on their toes consistently, most of the time, or has trouble putting their heels down even when you ask them to, that's a red flag. Persistent toe walking past age 2 can indicate several issues: tight Achilles tendons, sensory processing disorder, they're avoiding the sensation of their whole foot touching the ground, or neurological issues like cerebral palsy or autism. Even when there's no serious underlying condition, persistent toe walking that goes uncorrected leads to permanently shortened calf muscles and Achilles tendons, requiring surgery later to correct. Many pediatricians dismiss toe walking as a phase, and sometimes it is. But if it's still happening frequently past age 2, or if your child has difficulty walking flat-footed when asked, it needs evaluation. Physical therapy can correct it early. Waiting until age 5 or 6 often means the muscles have adapted to the shortened position and require more intensive intervention. A father in Minneapolis told me his son walked on his toes constantly from the moment he started walking at 12 months. Everyone said he'd outgrow it. But at age 4, he still couldn't stand flat-footed for more than a few seconds. His pediatrician finally referred him to PT. The therapist found severely tight Achilles tendons that required months of stretching and exercises to correct. If they'd started at age 2, it would have been much easier. Watch how your child walks. If it's frequent toe walking, address it early. Don't wait to see if they outgrow it. Here's the pattern across all these signs. They're all examples of skills that should be emerging within specific developmental windows. When they don't emerge, or emerge unusually, it suggests the underlying neural systems aren't developing typically. And the first 5 years are when the brain has the most plasticity, the most ability to change and adapt. Delays caught and addressed during this window often resolve completely. The same delays caught at age 7 or 8 become much harder to fix because the brain has already established its patterns. This isn't about labeling children or creating anxiety. It's about recognizing that early intervention works. 3 months of therapy at age 2 can prevent 3 years of struggle at age 7. That's not catastrophizing. That's neuroscience. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, even if your pediatrician dismisses it, push for evaluation. Early childhood specialists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, developmental pediatricians are trained to catch these subtle signs. Use them. So here's what I need you to hear. Noticing these signs doesn't make you paranoid. It makes you observant. And observation is the first step in getting your child what they might need. If you recognize several of these signs in your child, don't panic. Don't spiral. Just act. Call your pediatrician. Request evaluations. Early intervention services are often free or covered by insurance. The earlier you address developmental delays, the better the outcomes. And if your child is developing typically, now you know what to watch for. You can be that friend who gently mentions to another parent, "Hey, have you noticed your son isn't pointing yet?" Might be worth bringing up with your doctor. You can be the person who catches something early for someone else's child. These hidden signs are only hidden if we're not looking, but now you are. And that awareness might change everything for your child or someone else's. Trust what you see. Ask questions. Push for answers. You've got this.